Well, welcome everybody. Before we start our meeting, we're going to reconvene, but we have some dignitaries that are here, so I'd like to recognize them. Councilwoman Redinger, hello.
Hello.
And then I see Councilman Caruso, thank you for coming. And Councilwoman Veras, thank you for coming as well. You're all council people at Brexville. Is there anybody else I missed or didn't recognize? Okay. All right, well,
The rest of you are all special.
You're all special. As Barney would say, yeah. All right. All right, so item 3, we're going to reconvene our meeting and start our regular meeting. We have item A, we have our construction update and our tennis courts. So who is responsible for that? You know, and I also want to take the time, I want to welcome our interim treasurer. I haven't introduced him, Mr. Scott.
Please meet you.
Yes. And his personal assistant, Mr. Wyckoff, who also works for Human Resource during the day. So, is the Human Resource person.
Do we want to shut off this bank of lights?
Thank you, Chris.
Ready? No. Thank you all. Ryan Schmidt with TA Architecture. We're here with Shook Construction as well. We have this broken down. We'll give a brief update on the wetlands permitting process, the tennis courts, and then go into some discussions about the schedule for the projects. So with that being said, if we could go to the first slide, please. You can skip this one. Let's go back. Basically, the tennis court design, the site we are looking at is located over at the city property. There's a lot of debate over where and how to construct the tennis courts. Tennis courts are a very expensive item. There's a lot of maintenance and upkeep associated with those, and the city had some viable courts that were located at that site. There is presently Field B located over there, which will be home to 2 new tennis courts. We have been working with the city engineer on that particular site and vetting out how best to situate 2 new tennis courts on that site to essentially create a consolidated group of 5 tennis courts at the city site. That offers a lot of benefits: long-term maintenance, access to multiple courts, and kind of consolidation of facilities for that sort of thing. The design process for that will take us approximately 2 to 3 more weeks to get through that, and then we will be working with Shook Construction on getting that out to bid with the intent of getting that well underway and constructed this fall. There is weather contingent items that are associated with a tennis court project. That specifically is the surfacing that goes on the tennis court. So we'll be working through that process and making sure that we do everything we can to get that installed as quickly and as effectively as possible. And then if you could flip to the next one. The wetlands permit update, essentially this is a process that started a very, very long time ago. The city had undertaken the task of having a consultant essentially go through and analyze the existing site as it presently sat up at Blossom Hill. This is the site of the new school and the field house. What they do is they go through and they evaluate the site. They find any sort of wetland conditions that are present on the site. They make a report and identify those areas that would be considered wetlands. So in doing so, the next step is, as we developed the development plans for the project, you're obviously impacting some of those locations on the site, and then we went through the process of submitting to the EPA and the Army Corps for their reviews and their consideration. So all that process started way back last summer, essentially, and then as of the beginning of the year, submissions to the Army Corps and EPA took place. There was a process that took place after that where they're essentially going through and they put out public notice for comments. They review the applications, review kind of the development plan, and determine if there are any sort of insufficiencies or things of that nature. We are through that part of the process, and we're kind of in the home stretch, if you will, where they've reviewed all that. There were really no significant public comments or issues that were related to any sort of the review organizations that have jurisdiction over that sort of thing. So now they're in the process of putting together their essential formal review and suggestions of special conditions. We don't foresee any sort of special conditions associated with this project. There's been no indication that anything would be required of this project, but this is just a standard duration sort of thing that happens with these sorts of projects. They give you a window of duration, and that's essentially we're falling into that window, kind of right in line where it's been forecasting today. So, are there any questions from the board?
I'm just curious in general, having gone through a bunch of this stuff myself in the past in a totally different environment, I could never get anybody to admit to me why it takes them so long, what their steps are. They will never, they ever given you a process flow chart that says, here's why we start here, and our decision is here, and here's all the stuff we have to do in the meantime.
I think it's mostly contingent. If I had to guess, is they would say that this is the maximum duration, and the hope is that they fall ahead of that, but they are, by law, that's kind of their durations that they've set up for this sort of process. So it's
just a hold up to make sure that a number of people are employed over a period of time.
I wouldn't say that, but yes, I can see.
Once we get the permit, we might say things like that, but until we get the permit, they're working very diligently towards it.
To date, our correspondence and the city's correspondence and the city's consultants that are doing the wetland application, the EPA and Army Corps have been very accommodating thus far. So it has not been a drawn out or, combative sort of relationship. So, other questions?
So like the fall, when you're talking the fall, you're talking the beginning of the fall, is that when we're slated, the middle of the fall, the end, are we aiming for?
Their window is fall to early spring is their window from the.
No, for completion, for completion.
No, I wasn't onto this part yet, I'm
Okay,
sorry. This is,
okay.
I was gonna let Eric take over this part. This part, those durations, that July to December, obviously, we're in the midst of those two durations that are there, so.
Apologies.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Any questions with tennis or?
Well, yeah, there were some questions about tennis, but I don't know if you want to go through your whole presentation first and then circle back, because we hadn't, the last time when we talked about tennis courts, the estimates were 90 grand a court, 180, and then the numbers came in much higher, and then we got some other numbers about what would it be to replace all 5 courts on our campus, and so. Do we want to talk about that now, or do we want to loop back?
No, we can talk about that now. The cost estimates that we got, a tennis court range of pricing is anywhere from, I don't know who I should, right in the middle there, is anywhere typically between $70,000 and $90,000, generally speaking, for 5 new tennis courts. What you have with 5 new tennis courts is a bit of efficiency of cost. In going to the 2 courts, you still have mobilization, you still have those sorts of things, stormwater control, overhead profit conditions, all those sorts of things that are built into a project with 5 tennis courts, but we've kind of scaled back the number. The 70 to 90,000 is typically related to when you're doing the 5 tennis court type of project. In this project, the estimates that we've gotten, I believe, have taken into consideration all of those, sorts of potential costs. There are allowances in there to date. These are just estimates. There are allowances in there for stormwater and things of that nature. So the hope would be that that comes down. The benefit we have over at that city site is that it is currently a flat, developed site. There shouldn't be, big foundations in the ground or big sinkholes or things of that nature. It's been a baseball field. It's got drainage. It's in a good position. The only problem is that it's set back a little bit, and it'll be a little bit more difficult to get equipment over to that potential area or that area. The challenges you have here at this site is obviously the drainage and things of that nature that are up at the middle school parking lot, and that's something that is kind of related to the geography and topography of the site, and that everything kind of flows off that parking lot, flows downhill, and kind of hits those existing courts where they presently sit. We shouldn't have any of those sorts of issues over at the city site. So.
And to kind of expand upon what Ryan had mentioned with the allowances, and I think for the past 5-10 years, you guys have always tried to do inexpensive fixes to redirect some of the water. And at this point, I think we realize that the extent of the water it might be something a little bit more costly in order to divert some of the water in order to keep the tennis courts dry.
Right. One of the advantages of the city too that wouldn't have been able to happen here is that those areas are lit. So you would have lit courts as well. So that's another benefit to that area, that we wouldn't have to incur that cost. But yeah, everything, like I said, the hope is that everything comes down from that, but that's that kind of high-end estimate with those allowances built into that.
So, you know, and just to give everyone in the audience, so to speak, some background on where we're at with the tennis courts, the numbers that came in, originally we were hearing like 90 grand a court, but then there's extra cost. Right now we're only doing 2. So that the numbers that came in to put 2 new courts on Brecksville's campus was about $250,000. And then to replace and rebuild all 5 of our courts was $586,000. So, you know, to redo the courts on our campus is more than twice as much. So it's a very expensive proposition to rebuild all 5 courts, and they all need to be rebuilt. They're all past their life. We've been patching them, and they're at the end of their patching life. So the contractor we use to patch says, we can't guarantee the work anymore because they're in such bad shape. So, you know, the good news for the taxpayer is we got every last ounce of use of those tennis courts because they basically can't be played on much longer. But the decision in front of us was, you know, rebuild on campus, which again, $586,000 was the high-end cost, or $250,000, and continue our collaborative work with the city of Brecksville, who's been wonderful working with us on the field house, on Blossom, all of this collaboration, shared use agreements. It benefits both the district and the city. It saves both the district and the city money. As we look to build the new courts on the city property, they are basically giving up a softball field, baseball field, so that we can locate the courts there. The question I had is on the line items, that the information that we got, and some of the information we got, we will have it posted on board docs on the agenda. So it has, I know there's some contingencies on here, but then it says add CMR general conditions lump sum for, you know, 33 grand. So can you talk about the CMR piece? Is this like extra overhead for, you know, to manage the project and take on the risk of if there's cost overruns, or what's in that number, so to speak?
That's exactly what it is. It's our staffing and general conditions costs lumped into that number. Basically to have on-site supervision, making sure that the contractors install everything according to the drawings and specs, and everything gets built right.
Okay.
So the way Mark just, you know, the RFP process for the construction management services were essentially for the school, and then we understood that there would be work like tennis courts or fire alarm doing. So you basically have to determine as a team what the appropriate staffing is that's needed to oversee that process, and then that cost essentially gets allocated to each project, if you will, as it's incurred within that project.
Right. And again, just for everybody's background, you know, the decision then, if we go forward with the 2 courts on Brecksville, there's 2 ways we can go. One is under this CMR agreement, which is construction manager at risk, where Shook is the CMR for our new building, our new pre-K to 5 building, along with the field house. And by using that same arrangement, do the tennis courts. So this is kind of like an add-on to do the tennis courts. So there is a little extra overhead for the CMR piece, I understand that. The benefit is, aside from the services you're providing, we can fast track this. The problem is we're working on a tight timeline, and we're trying to get the tennis courts built and playable by spring for our tennis teams. The other alternative for the board is we could not use the CMR process and put it out to bid. Problem is it extends the timeline, and work needs to start this fall. So if we were to put it out to bid, we might save some money, but we would then have time constraints of being ready in the spring. And at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature on whether we can get them done by spring also, but this is the fastest path in order to have courts that are playable
Mark,
in the spring.
Could I add one thing
Sure.
too? Another benefit that probably many people involved in the discussion haven't really even realized is by building over at the city site and essentially expanding their offerings over there, you're able to utilize what you have over here at the middle school site. If you were to replace them, you're essentially shutting those down for a season at least, potentially. Since it's a more substantial project, it might drag into the spring more than if you were obviously building over the City Hall site. So you are getting the benefit of being able to use those courts while they're doing the work over at City Hall, so.
The other benefit of the arrangement is that, and it hasn't been finalized, but we're trying to work with the city, to have them take over the maintenance of the courts. Since 3 of the courts are theirs already, we would be adding 2, and if that all comes to fruition, then from a district standpoint, we're avoiding having to maintain, tennis courts, which we're doing now.
Plus, it's at the availability of the rest of the community as well when we're not in season, so that's another plus, which these are too, but they're located by those other tennis courts, so
Right.
it's great.
And I know there was a I don't believe the parent is here, but one who's been very involved in trying to help us understand the true extent of the problems with the tennis courts and help move us forward to try to get the tennis courts into a better place. And there was some concerns raised about the 3 courts that are there. Do they meet specifications? Are they are they where they need to be? And the research that was done was that from an Ohio High School Athletic Association standpoint, there aren't hard regulations that say the courts have to be an exact size or a certain. They don't lay that out, so they are in compliance for high school athletics. Are they at, they won't be at the level of the 2 brand new ones because those will be built to the latest specs, but they certainly are good, safe, and compliant to play on. If there are opportunities to fix that up for any tennis parents out there, that could be explored, but would have to be looked at, like what would need to be improved, and then cost estimates, and then where would that money come from? That might be, something that the tennis club would want to take a look at if they wanted to pursue something like that. But that is an option. I'm assuming the city of Drexel would be okay if somebody wanted to come in and pay for improvements on their tennis courts, but it's something to consider.
Well, and the other thing that we've talked about, we need to come up with a master plan for our property up here. We have a lot of changes that will be happening, and so even though it's physically not a good option to replace all 5 tennis courts, we don't know where we would put them. We don't have a plan yet, and that's, the future board will have to decide and create a master plan for here, because we'll have Hilton and some other options available to us. So it's definitely in the future, but it's not where we're at right now in the planning stage.
Any other questions on tennis or wetlands?
I just want to make sure, I guess, from a board standpoint, that we're comfortable in providing the direction to continue on in the CMR
Right.
format and build the 2 courts. So just because I know you had given us the options, and to Mike's point, I don't think any of us were that thrilled with the rebuild at almost $600,000. So
Are we all in agreement?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Eric to discuss. And Chris.
Please convey to the city, thank you for your partnership. We never underestimate it, so thank you.
Oh, you go back one more. The other back ones. Brian was giving me. There you go. One more.
All right.
Perfect, thank you. Kind of touch back on what Mike had mentioned earlier regarding the wetland permit and his experience with it. It's been similar to a lot of the project team's experiences. You're not really sure exactly when you're going to get that permit. So when we started in design, we were kind of evaluating 2 different schedules. One is if we got the permit early, which is our Schedule A, and that was the fall of 2019 start with the completion in the fall of 2021. And we're also evaluating, well, what happens if we did not get that permit in time? And that's our Schedule B, which would be a spring of 2020 start and a completion in the summer of 2022. So looking at those 2 schedules as we progressed through the design, in the fall of 2019 start, just based on where the design was at, we anticipated needing to do an early site package that would come out ahead of the building. We also recognized that it was an aggressive schedule that had minimal float in it, so didn't have a lot of time if we were to get weather delays or government delays or planning review delays. And then on the back end of that schedule, with not having a lot of time, there was only 1 month allotted for facility move-ins. So you're combining 4 elementary schools into one building. In that schedule, we also had some contact with some of the subcontract community and noticed that with fast tracking a project like that, you're gonna get a little bit of sub-premium, also with some limited competition. There might only be 4 or 5 drywall contractors that can keep up with that schedule, whereas you have a little bit longer duration, you might get 10 contractors who can compete for that same job. Thank you.
So just to recap, the genesis of this is from a conversation that happened 2 weeks ago that the board had. We asked you to come today to recap and discuss, what had happened at that meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy.
And that's exactly what we're at. So this is an opportunity for the public. I had asked for us to recap and, when we're done at the end, if there's questions, anything you need to ask clarification, you're welcome to do so. I would hope that you did, okay? We want to make sure that we hear what you have to say, so.
Yes.
I would let me also just add on, so, we discussed all of this same information very thoroughly in our August 7th meeting. Since earlier in this year, we video record all of our meetings. Those videos are posted and they're indexed to the agenda. So you can go online and pull up the agenda for the August 7th meeting, and if you don't want to relive all the glory of the whole meeting, you can just pull into this discussion and hear all of the talk we had, because we talked through a lot of different things in that meeting. So this is kind of a refresh of that, to make sure the public was aware. Here's kind of what went into the board's direction. So as well as tonight, you can also go back and look at the full conversation that the board had when we landed on a path forward.
Thank you. And that second schedule option is what we were calling a Schedule B, and that was a spring of 2020 start with a completion in 2022, and that would be the summer. That would be coming to the board with one single guaranteed maximum price for them to approve. At that point, you're not asking the board to approve one GMP before the building's approved, so you're seeing your total cost of the construction project at one time. We truly felt as a team that is a schedule that was built for success, and that allotted 4 months for facility move-in. Joel, I'm sure you would agree, there's going to be some hiccups that come along when you're trying to move 4 buildings into one. Second, I mentioned it earlier, is the ability to absorb any kind of delays that are outside of the project's control, and then some increased competition, which will hopefully drive down the price of overall the project.
For the 4 months, can I just ask, where did you come up with that estimate that it would take 4 months?
That is we didn't estimate it'd take 4 months. That was the time allotted for the school to move into the building. So we'd be
So
complete
why so long, I'm asking?
You're done at the end of, your schedule shows you finish in April of that year.
Right.
That allows, there's a 4-month period from the time they're done with the building
Right.
until school starts.
Okay.
It doesn't take 4 months, but there's a 4-month period
Okay,
there
got it, thank
to
you.
move furniture in, get the technology commissioned. If you're bringing over your computers, all that kind of stuff, you have time. Gives the teachers a chance to come in whenever they need to during the summer.
It's the same process that's used for Schedule A on why there's no buffer in Schedule A, which is you work backward. How long does it take to do all of this?
Right.
And you pick, okay, here's where we're at, and then you work backward to say, where are you at? And that's why the original Schedule A, there was no buffer. Everything's gotta go just right. You don't have time to absorb hiccups, weather. Instead, if you ran into weather problems and you fell behind, you'd have to have subcontractors work overtime, right? And try to
Right.
find out how can you make up the lost time, versus if we go to, where we've gone to Schedule B, you've got that buffer. So you have 4 months to move in, but if we run into hiccups and turns out to be 2 months, you still have buffer.
Exactly. And Chris always does a good job of explaining, in every construction project, there's 3 factors: quality, cost, and time. And it's difficult to have all 3. You could have a high quality project done at a fast track, but it's going to cost you to do that. And so I think as a team we made the decision that we were concerned about having a good quality project at a lower cost. And in order to do that, you kind of sacrifice a little bit of time. Is anybody?
And you reduce risk.
Right.
You know, which is what, you know, we want to make sure that we, back to that point of a schedule that's built for success, we want to make sure that at the end of the day, what is communicated to the community, to the teachers, to everybody that's involved in the project is something that we can all perform to and achieve to and understand that, you know, we can all be confident moving forward that it's
So what happened next spring is like this last spring.
Right.
I mean, if it's
Well,
something that wet,
And part of the challenge in Schedule A, even if the permits were to come through, really, at this point in the next 30 days, is all of the site work and the earth moving activities would essentially happen this winter, which is not an optimal time to do that work. It's a more expensive time to do that work because of what you have to do to deal with the weather and achieve the quality that you need to achieve. Where in Schedule B, you'll actually be starting that work really in the optimal construction season and start the building on a path for success on a solid foundation, both literally and somewhat figuratively, if you will. So ultimately, I think the outcome of this long discussion within our monthly project meetings and at the board meeting on the 7th was we came forward as a project team to the board and said, we feel almost regardless of whether the permits come through or not in the next 30 days, that it's in the best interest of the project to consider moving to this, just lock in on this Schedule B and consider that the path forward, and then that gives the design team direction on how they need to proceed and complete design, and obviously our team direction on how we'll move forward with the process. And that was the decision that was rendered, and at the same point we were asked to make sure that we could come back and talk about this openly so that we'd be here to answer questions or explain to the best of our ability why we think that's the right decision for the project.
Well, and I would say also that, you know, we talked through a lot of details. So this GMP, guaranteed maximum price, you know, Shook has to go out to bid. They have to bid all of this. And the reason why they did, you know, it was in our best interest not to delay this decision and this direction that the board gave back on August 7th is once you start going out for bid, you know, as they mentioned, with an aggressive timeline of Schedule A, you're going to have less contractors that can meet that schedule. And you're also going to have some that are going to have to work overtime. They may have to get other, you know, additional resources that aren't part of their normal crew, which could affect quality. And we talked about, well, wait a minute, so can't you bid it out, put it out to bid for Schedule A and Schedule B? But then that has drawbacks about, you know, the contractors, and I'll let you speak to it. What's the challenge with going out and say, well, let's just go out and bid Schedule A and Schedule B, and then we have options for both?
Well, one of the challenges with that is the people that can't achieve Schedule A likely are not going to go. They're not going to go through that process. There's not a high incentive for them to do so. The other challenge, part of what we talked about was, does it make sense for us to proceed with Schedule A, and then if the permits don't come through, we could always try to fall back to Schedule B. But at that point, you've created a contractual situation with someone where you've told them, hey, I need you to figure out how to do this work in 18 months, if you will, and now you come back to them and say, oh no, the schedule has moved, the seasons have changed, and now we're going to be on a longer schedule, and you've really left yourself open contractually for them to come to you and make claims for additional cost, additional overhead. You've really given up your leverage in that relationship, and again, we, you know, not to get too philosophical, but we're building a building that we, you know, I would hope for 50 to 70 years will serve this community very well, and at the end of the day,
I thought you guaranteed 100.
If we need it to be 100, it'll be 100. But what we can't sacrifice is quality first and foremost. And you know, this is just me, but what I want to make sure is that every dollar that we're spending on the building is dollars that go into the building for the benefit of the students. And what I have a hard time spending a lot of money on is overtime and putting lime stabilization in the soil in the middle of the winter so that we can keep building, versus knowing if we were doing that in June, we don't need to spend potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars that at the end of the day gets buried and nobody ever sees it. I'd rather us have those couple $100,000 to put into tennis courts or to put into, you know, some function of the building that the students benefit from. And that's the challenge, is Schedule A, given the nature of it, the aggressive nature and the time of season, we're going to spend a lot of money on things that the kids will never see, touch, or feel. Schedule B, what we give up is a year. We give up that time, but I think at the end of the day, the district and the citizens and the students will be much better served with the product that they receive.
So, I mean, I want to acknowledge this, which I did at the last meeting. I mean, it is disappointing. It's disappointing that we aren't going to be able to open it when we said that, we told that, the people that we were going to be opening it. So I want to recognize that. I also want to recognize the fact that this puts people in displacement for a whole nother year. Our teachers, our children, and so I really want to recognize the fact that this is not, an optimal thing that I wanted to happen or see happen. I mean, and so it's the balance between the responsibility of building something that's quality to what the responsibility that you had for what you had said you were going to do, and so the thing is this is a whole separate discussion on, what our temporary situation and how that's working out, and hopefully, I'm hopeful that it's not a whole year. I've talked to the board already, and we're not all in agreement on this, that I'd like to see us look at creative options on it not being a full year, because I recognize the fact from being a teacher that this is difficult. This is difficult putting our children where they're at, and it wasn't the, it's the best solution, so we can get something great in the end, but it's not, the thing that I would like to see happen. So, are we finished with this presentation? So, does anybody have any questions for these gentlemen here? Yes. Please state, this is kind of like unconventional, so
Sure.
you just say your name and your address like we do speaking to the public, that would be great.
Sure. My name is Erin Naso. I'm 6755 Rivercrest. I've only recently started to track this. I really kind of thought that everyone that's here had the best interest of our children at heart. I'm not really feeling like that's the case. I would encourage all of you to walk through the school and understand what the kids are going through. It is a war zone in some degrees with how hot it is, and with how the 5th graders have been parachuted into the middle school. It is undesirable. It's ridiculous. I don't understand how you got this project by selling a certain timeline, and now you're baiting and switching and saying, like, we can't do that actually. And what happens when we have another horrible spring and then we run into a situation where we can't cut down trees because we have a bad situation? Like, what is your plan for dealing with that?
Well, I think there's two things. One is, so if you back up, at least from our view of, where the process started for us, the project genesis is there's a general scope. Okay, we're going to build a pre-K through 5 building. We generally know where it's going to go, and this is the desired timeline. We all understood that. Now, what starts to happen though is as design progresses, you learn about the site. The building starts to take form. So one of the things we talked about at length in the meeting is, in the last couple of meetings, in general, on a typical, what I'll call a vertical building project, you'll usually have about 2 months of site work to get to the point where you have established what you call a building pad, which means you can start creating something vertical that you can see. You've done all the work in the ground, you can start to come up. The nature of the site that we're on, which is a beautiful site and is going to serve the city very well, the community very well, but also the building design that we have, which is, again, great design. We're looking at almost 4 months of site work before we can get to the point that the building starts to go up. Well, that wasn't known at the time. We didn't have soil borings, we didn't have geotechnical reports, we didn't have any of those things. So this process is a dynamic process. It continues to evolve. So the question is, okay, we've understood now there is more work on the front end than was reasonably anticipated. So the option is you figure out how to start to compress the schedule on the back end. So we've been working through those iterations, and we can do that. What starts to happen is cost starts to go up. Now you're starting to talk about a job that's going to work 6 days a week, really from the start, just to try to achieve the schedule. Then you start talking about what's the cost of that. Now, what do we have to take away from the building to be able to afford that premium, that schedule? And we've continued to run those analyses and quite frankly came to the board and said, this is the schedule. It is not that it is not achievable, but here are the trade-offs that we make to do that.
Is the conditions of the schools that the kids are in now, is that a condition that you guys are
It
considering?
absolutely
It
needs
should
to be a condition,
Yeah.
It should
absolutely.
be, and it's not.
Well, I think there's two decisions that, while they have some relation, they were separate. One decision was to close Central and move 4th grade back to the elementaries and 5th grade up to the middle school. That was a separate decision, okay, which has a relationship to the new school because it's all a temporary situation until the new school comes in line. Then there's the other decision, which is, do we continue to march towards fall 2021 to open the new building with all the aggressive schedule? And we went through all of the things that went into that, and that was a separate decision. And so the decision about moving to 2022, let's keep in mind also, if those permits don't come in the next
Right,
couple of
it's a
months, it'd be a
moot-
moot point
right.
anyway. So,
Absolutely.
you know, I understand that, you know, for the families that have to live through 4th and 5th grade, right, through this window, and have to live through more students in the elementary buildings and more students in the middle school, it's less than ideal. It's less than ideal for our staff, it's less than ideal for our parents, okay, and our students, okay? It's unfortunate. When we made that decision, you know, we were provided information that there was capacity there. Now, we just were a week or so into school, and so I'm sure that there's still some settling going on, and so we can take a look if there's issues at schools about what are those issues and what can be done. The fact that this now has to extend for 3 years instead of 2 is a separate issue because it deals with when is this new school coming online. So what the board was trying to do, and what the board has done, is looked and said, do we want to look short term and say, let's go full board to try to get the students out of the older buildings 1 year sooner and absorb the risk, the cost, and we may not even be able to do it? Or do we want to try to take a longer term view and say, look, we build a new school building every 30 or 40 years, and we want this to last. The other aspect, which we haven't gotten into, is the cost. The new building originally was estimated at like 39 million. Well, it's coming in a lot higher. With the bond money, the $44.5 million was supposed to be for the new building and to fix up the middle school and the high school, because we have a long list of things that are needed there, okay? And we've already had to chew into all of that contingency, almost all of it, for the new building, because that's the priority. So we're already dealing with a lot of these different aspects that we have to figure out what makes sense going forward. Now we already have chewed into most of our contingency. I think we have a little bit more than $1 million left right now after this new building comes on that we can put in the high school and middle school. Well, if we hit aggressive Schedule A, we could blow through $1 million. Now what do? Now you're left with, maybe we got to compromise on the quality of the building. Maybe we got to take out features that we don't want to take out. Or do we go back to the voters and say, well, now we need more money? And so this has been a complicated journey, and I would assure you that everybody on this board has the best interests of all stakeholders. We're trying to do the best we can, but this is dynamic. We didn't guarantee that we were going to, nobody can guarantee you're going to open a building in 2021, right? I mean, we had such a wet spring, you got all kinds of other aspects. We don't even know if the permits are going to come in.
Right.
So we're trying to do the best we can. You make decisions in real time with the information that we're fed. When things are difficult, we're moving into these new buildings, we need to get some feedback from our superintendent and our staff. How are things going? Where can we make improvements? What do we need to do? Is there temporary things we can do? How do we bridge to the future? And let's make sure when we get to the future, we have an absolutely high quality building that comes in under budget and on time. And that's what went into the decision. It wasn't, we don't care about anybody. We're trying to manage all expectations.
I just think that you guys have a different perspective, because I have kids who are in 3rd grade and 5th grade, and this is ground zero for these decisions. Central, it was not an act of God that brought Central down, it was lack of foresight, which is all here. So now, there's might be plan A and plan B, but I want to see plan C. I want to see where we're compromising, you're compromising, you're compromising. There's got to be a better solution, creative solution, work harder, work smarter, work whatever. This is not happening. I want to see more. My kids are expected to show up to school with a pencil and homework and complete their stuff. So far, you guys are not adhering to the same requirements that the kids are required to do. There has to be more.
Mike Berlin, 4826 Snow Blossom. Real quick question. As we go back to that 2019 fall start date and then 2021, it's more for the school board, the 2021 completion date, where did that initial date come from? Meaning it's the date that the community has in their head, and it's the date that they were, I'm not gonna say promised, but once it was uttered, it became a de facto promise. So, because now we're talking about changing Schedule
Well,
A.
and I'm saying to you, that's unfortunate because I don't know the answer to your question. Do you?
I think you work backwards for how long is it to build a building.
That's
So
working
when
forward.
the bond issue passed and you looked at, remember when the bond issue passed, we didn't have a lot of details nailed down, like the arrangement with Brecksville, where we were gonna put the school.
And Mark, I
Like,
understand, but the question is,
It
somebody,
seems like we should have.
somebody put a
Stated
2021 school date
Right.
start, right? I don't know who it was. I don't even remember when it happened, but someone put that out there,
Right.
right? And as I look at the situation, first of all, I never believed that the 2021 date would happen. I mean, we just asked the question. The police station, which is a significantly easier project, is already months behind of its original date. And it's nothing of the magnitude of the school or the site or the hardware or equipment that's going to go into the new school. But it kind of goes to the expectations that the community has, is somehow this 2019 start date, 2021 move-in date came out
Right.
from somebody. And so that's what was in the community's mind. And now it feels wrong, right? And it's in my opinion, it's right, because I think that you're going to have more slips and there's going to be more mistakes and a roof may not get done on time. But, and I think that's the problem that the school district is having, right? So
Listen, I'm speaking for myself. I agree with you. I don't know where it came from, unfortunately. I mean, we take our direction about the building from the architect, okay? I can tell you that I hear what you're saying because I felt the same way when people were talking about moving up to Blossom. We said something to the taxpayers and
Right.
I felt like, no, like we didn't sell it that way, so we're not going that way. Now, not everybody agree with that. I guess I know it's unfortunate. I don't know where it came from, but we're here now. So, we could find the genesis of that, but, we're here now. I will tell you, I can tell you that I have tried to stick to what we said. And this is like where I'm at with this dilemma right now, because you
Yeah.
can see what you can see, that's not a possibility where, right now. But there's things that are occurring and you can see the good reason why for changing it. But I hear what you're saying. It doesn't feel good to me either that that's what it was.
And I can vote for that too. I'm very disappointed.
No, and I understand that
Put off a year.
it's kind of the caution to the board and to the school district and to the parents and, right, is the expectations that are, once something is stated, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Right.
If it's not stated as, hey, we don't know yet, it may be 2019 start date, it may be 2020 start date, depending on that, it'll be roughly this many months, but it didn't come out like that, and I think that's what, at least I sense, is the frustration is.
And I can understand that frustration. One of the things that's bothered me about the entire process is in the state of Ohio, by law, we have to pass a bond issue before we can think about starting to build the school. Okay? I would like to see it the other way around. I would like to see, here's the plans for the new school, and here's how much money we need, and then go get a bond issue.
Right.
But that's not the law in the state of Ohio. And that's frustrating just to start with.
I think what's exacerbated this whole situation is the decision when we closed Central, because when we made that decision, we were still on track for fall 2021, so it was a 2-year. Well, now it's another whole extra year. So now, if you go back in time and recast that decision, knowing that you had 3 years in the building, the board may have come out with a different decision, but I'm guessing that part of the reason you're here is because you're back, Central's closed and now you're back in the buildings have more students in them, more staff in them, and, we're working through settling into a new configuration, and that's making life harder on everyone.
Yeah, and for me, I have one child who's not yet in school, and I have one that is in 5th grade, so.
I think you had more buy-in from the parents and trust from the parents, because it was under the impression that this was a short-term solution. This was the compromise that the parents were putting on the table, that all right, this is not a perfect situation. Central was falling apart. It was not safe for kids to be in there. We're reasonable people. Agree. However, chop, get to it. No, you have to move faster. This is not acceptable.
And I'm on the opposite side of Erin, and I love her dearly.
I love you more.
My son's experience in 5th grade is great. So he's excited to be there. I met his teachers today. And so his integration has happened much smoother than I expected it to happen. So, and I've stated before, I grew up in a 5 through 8 system. So for me, 5 through 8 is a normal situation, but his transition has been wonderful. Now, I would love Marco to go to the new school whenever he gets there. But
I've spoken to Aaron as well, and we had a good conversation. And the thing is we're settling in right now, but we need to look at how is it going. And it's not I'm glad to hear what you're saying, but it's not maybe happening for everybody, and we need to make sure that we make it the way it should be. And so, I can tell you it's my first week of school, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's not the way it's going to always be, but we're getting to that point where we should be settled, and we need to take a look. How is recess going? These things that we talked about, and we need as a board to make sure that they are happening and what's educationally best for the kids. So.
That was in the back.
Jeff Verbaker, 6806 Chaffee Court. My daughter just started Chippewa, and I guess my first question is just taking the bond money and fixing the existing base still on the table? Because I question even why it's being consolidated. That's a huge reason to move to Brecksville, is the neighborhood schools, and they're essentially taking that away.
I'm sorry, you said take the bond money
and just invest it in the existing
schools.
footprint.
No, we can't do that. Mr. Riley, do you want to explain why we can't just take that bond money and put it back into the old schools?
I don't have the purpose clause of the bond issue in front of me, but the voters, if the purpose clause said build a new elementary, then that's what the board is committed to do with a significant portion of the money. You can't, that would be an illegal bait and switch, for lack of a better phrase. You can't vote on one thing and use the money to renovate buildings.
So you're constrained, you'd have to run it back.
Well, and so keep in mind, we're building a new building and we're going to offline the 4 elementaries. So what we're trying to do is now Central is offline, so it's 3 elementaries, right?
Right.
So we're trying to keep those buildings safe and functional until 2022 now, until we can offline them. So we're hesitant to put money into them that is just going to be thrown away. So we want to keep them safe and dry and functional, but we don't want to put extra money in because the buildings are going to come offline.
So that still is an option to not close them, but you're focused on what was put to the voters.
Well, they will close when when the new building is done. We will offline the 3 elementaries. The board has not made any decision on what to do with those buildings or the property, but we will offline them, meaning they won't be used for education.
That is the decision. But that is
unless we just have a massive population explosion and all of a sudden we need more space, right? But again, right now there hasn't been any decision on what comes next after the new building opens.
But if you did run it to the voters, that bond money could be reallocated. Theoretically.
I don't
No,
think
you
so.
have to, in theory, if you didn't want to carry out the purpose for which the bonds were issued, you'd have to defease those bonds, and they have a limited call. Usually when the person who buys the bond generally gets what's called a 10-year call protection, which means the bonds cannot be repurposed or bought back for a 10-year period of time. So the district would still be paying interest on those bonds for at least 10 years.
It's already hit the market.
Yeah, the bonds were sold in
Last
the
year.
fall of last year,
Yes.
about a year ago. And the advantage of doing that is allows for interest to be accrued, which helps deals with some contingencies.
Right. Again, just while we're on the topic, so the district has that money and we've been earning interest on it. So
Right.
the total budget that we're working with is north of 44.5 million because we're earning interest. But obviously costs go up the longer you wait to build.
Okay. Yes.
Teresa M, 6300 Old Royalton. Has there always been a plan A and plan B? A schedule A and schedule B?
No.
No.
This just happened. This is within the last month.
So is that on the builder or is that on the district?
The need for the Schedule A and Schedule B started to become more clear when we weren't sure if we were gonna get permits. So like if the permits from the Ohio EPA and US Army Corps don't come in the next couple of months, this is all a moot point, because we never would have been.
And I think we're all realistic and we know that things aren't gonna always happen on time, but shame on the builder for not saying, hey, it could take longer. Telling the public it could take longer, because, I mean, this is really disappointing, very disappointing. I want it quality, I really do. My kid's never gonna see this building. She's 4th grade right now, but she's dealing with the consequences of all this. And it's just very, very disappointing. I feel like we overpromised and underdelivered.
I mean, I think Kathleen and Fred already said it, I'll reiterate it. We share in your disappointment. We're not happy that we have to wait another year. I think your point is well taken. We probably could have messaged better and said, hey, here's a possibility that this may not go through, right? And so, you know, that could have been something that we messaged sooner, saying, hey, you know what, there's a possibility it isn't gonna come through. I think a lot of people understand when, and Kathleen said too, I don't remember when the campaign was running and we talked, we're 2021, I assume it was working backward, like, well, if you get the bond money at this time, right? Remember, we didn't have a site, we didn't know where we were gonna build it, so it's like, okay, this seemed like we could open by 2021. As those things started to come into focus, which is this collaboration with Brecksville, this whole arrangement where, you know, Central and Blossom and the Field House and all that stuff came in, then that introduced the wetlands, which introduced the permits, which it was like this snowball thing. And so all the way along, we thought we could get it, and then we started getting some feedback like, you know what, we may not be able to make this if the permits don't come in. And then we're fast tracking the permits. And so to your point, yeah, I think we could have done better in letting the public know, like, look, the 2021 is, you know, it's on the fence right now because there's other things that are coming that are coming into play that's outside of our control that may impact the schedule.
Well,
so.
here's the other thing that happened that wasn't anticipated when we were working on the bond. We didn't believe we would have to close Central early. That started coming into light about October when we had a situation with water and we started seeing we're pouring $100,000 into that situation. We then had, you know, we wanted to make sure we told our staff, you know, we started talking, are we gonna keep pouring money into this? Are we sure that it's gonna last for the 2 years? There was 2 months and I wanted to make sure our staff and our families had time to prepare. And if we were gonna close Central, you know, we wanted to make sure that it got the closing that it deserved, and we had a lot of things that needed to be planned. And so that closing of Central was not part of the whole process when we were looking at the bond, which kind of now started shoving this whole other situation, which is, you know, has happened and that we're all living with right now. And so that decision with Central even was so short because of the fact we have to tell our staff, we're gonna have to get ready, so either we're gonna do this or not. And so, you know, that's why I see why we're at today, you know, with the elementaries and in the middle school, because we didn't see that back in May when we were running that bond, you know, that campaign.
If you go back to we had a December meeting where the board made the decision to close Central, and we had a town hall, and we had a lot of staff, a lot of parents show up, and raised a lot of valid points. And I stated in that we need to be better, we have to be better, okay? The decision-making process about what information do we have, you know, that, you know, did we solicit feedback from everybody? Did we look at this every which way? But keep in mind, we were under time constraints. The decision had to be made quick. There were a number of other factors that was requiring the decision to make more quickly than we would have liked.
Right.
So the board would have loved more runway to get more feedback from staff and parents and other information, but we didn't have it. We had to make a decision when we made it. And, you know, don't ask me, well, what exactly was, there were constraints, we had to make it. So it's unfortunate, and now, like I said, the fact that we're pushing the opening another year has exacerbated this, and you're dropped right in the middle of the school's just opened. We just moved all these students back into the buildings, into the old buildings. We haven't had a chance to settle and work out some kinks. I've been on the board, this is my 8th year, and every year what we find, and I know Chris is back there, right, there are hiccups usually with transportation. Parents are complaining, you know, my kid was on the bus too long, whatever, and it takes time. Work out the kinks, make an adjustment here, make an adjustment there, and usually, a month into the school, everything dies down. Like, because we kind of settled in and worked it out. So this is way more complicated than bus routes. We've moved all of these staff and students into you know, the middle school and back into the elementary. So, you know, I would also ask that you try to give us, be a little patient and give us a little time and tell us what's broken, what's not working well. So Joelle and her staff, we can start figuring out, okay, how do we make this better? How do we get this settled in? How do we get you guys, you know, the kinks worked out and the issues solved so that we can be as productive as we can in the next 3 years?
And as an advocate for this school district, I mean, I've always been on board with everything the school district has basically done. I think going forward, if we want the community to be on board and we want people to agree with what is going on and you want them to pass future bonds, future levies, you need to start like under promising and over delivering. You really need to start giving full disclosure that this might take way longer than we anticipate, but we're doing the best we can.
And that message is heard. I will remind everyone, though, we have been audio recording our meetings for a long time. Now, the audio recordings were great because you got the full uncut version of what happened, but you didn't know who was saying what unless you knew people's voices, okay? So from a full transparency standpoint, take a look around and see how many school boards are video recording their meetings, posting it online, and indexing it to their agenda items. So, you know, keep in mind too, our community and our public also has a bit of an obligation to plug in. We have this posted out there. Go and listen to the meetings. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. You're interested in the tennis update? Go pull up the tennis update and listen to it. You're interested in the decision to close Central? Pull that up and listen to it. And so we're trying to make it easier so that you see what we're doing is completely transparent. And if you spend the time to listen, like if you go back to August 7th and listen to our discussion, you'll see this wasn't a 5-minute discussion. It was a long discussion. We talked through a lot of things. We went through a lot of data, much more than we have this evening. So yes, we can do better, you know, but our community also needs to take advantage of what we provide, which is full video of all of our meetings.
With all due respect, Central is 100 years old. You have been sitting on this board for 8 years. Where were you?
In terms of what?
In terms of foresight. It's not like a tree fell on Central. We're all confused. We had to move quick. We need your patience. You had that for 8 years. You've been seeing that the school has been falling apart, and suddenly you had to make these knee-jerk reactions. And so now we have, you know, you say that the school's going to be, you know, completed on one date. You say that, you know, we need patience because we didn't know that Central was going to fall apart. I did. Am I the only one here that knows it was going to fall apart? Are you confused or surprised?
Well, just to be clear, Central didn't fall apart. Central, just to be clear, Central was safe and functional. That we had environment impact studies done. There weren't any. What precipitated the decision to close Central early was a number of water issues with the roof, okay? And there was some water issues from a nearby construction site that caused some flooding, okay? So these were unexpected and additional, and so we were trying to get out ahead and say now that we're starting, the prior 8 years, we didn't have any issues. I mean, it's an old building, right? It's normal maintenance. We got to do things. Yeah, the chimney pieces are falling off. You got to net it. Yeah, I mean, yes, you got to. So this wasn't a case where we just ignored it for 8 years. It was still functional, but you know, you have to have a plan to go out to the community and say, we need money, and here's what we're gonna do with the money, okay? So 8 years ago wasn't the right time to go out to the community. At the time, the board wasn't looking at offlining 4 elementary buildings. So
Because there's
this-
no foresight. You're not thinking ahead.
Well, I mean, that's one opinion, okay? I mean, it's
Sure,
easy
but
to go back 8 years ago, but who's to say that, you know, this, so we're in 2019. 8 years ago puts us at 2011. We are just coming over the hangover of the Great Recession, okay? We didn't, in 2009, 10, and 11, we had new levy issues that failed. 3 years in a row. We couldn't get operating money. When we came out of that Great Recession and we had 3 levies fail in a row, do you remember what happened? 100% pay to play, loss of high school busing, cut of staff, increased classroom sizes. Those all happened in 2010, 11, and 12. So it's easy now to look back and say, well, just go back 8 years and take Central offline. We couldn't even get operating money.
I'm not
Okay?
saying.
So I'm just saying, you know, the board back then, and since I've been on the board, we've tried, 2011, we were on for a new levy, okay? 3 years in a row it failed. We weren't back on the ballot for 6 years. 6 years. We were told, this is part of the reason why I ran for board. We were told the only solution is new money. Taxpayers have to give us more money. I said no. I went and said, I'm gonna run on a platform that says we need to bring our expenditures under control. Okay, and we were able to do that, and over time the economy got better, and we were able to then reduce our classroom sizes, restore high school busing, restore pay to participate at 50%, reduce it. Now people say, yeah, it would be great if it was free. Well, yes, okay, but again, there are all these economic constraints, and I'd be happy to sit down with you or sit down with anybody and relive all those, but it was not because the board didn't have foresight. I mean, that was not, after 3 operating levies failed in a row, that was not the time to go out for a bond issue to replace a building. We couldn't even operate the buildings we had. So it's a difficult situation. The timing of this bond issue and the new building, the voters were very generous. We ended up passing an operating levy to bring our financial situation back into a good, stable position, and then we were able to look at a bond issue because everything lined up. The other timing on the bond issue, okay, is the bond to pay for the new high school was expiring. Mm-hmm. So we had this unique window where we could go to the voters and say, here's a new bond issue, but it's really like a renewal of the old because your taxes will just stay the same. Part of the reason why I think so many people support it is like, okay, I'm paying it already, they're not gonna go up, it's just gonna stay the same. You couldn't do that 8 years ago. You would have had to have a tax increase right off of the recession. So these are complicated situations, and the board is working in real time, things change, the board changes, and I will tell you this, I've been on the board for 8 years, I've served with these fine people and other people, and I have not met anybody that came onto the board that didn't have the best interests of all stakeholders. They really don't. People don't. We get $100 a meeting,
Right.
okay?
No,
You're not joining the board to make money.
Well, and I'm
you're-
not here to beat you guys up. I'm here to advocate for my child. And so
Right.
maybe that's not coming across correctly.
Right.
But I see something that you don't see because you're on that side of the table and I'm on this side of the table. And because you're not seeing that, you need to hear it.
And we want to hear it, and we appreciate you and everyone here that is sharing their thoughts with us.
Yes. Hi, Erin Soria, 8526 Settlers Passage. Kind of piggyback off, being an advocate. In regards to this whole switch and, So my daughter is in the MH room and was supposed to be at Highland, the MH room, and I got switched to Chippewa. I didn't find out, I found out through a teacher through Chippewa. My biggest thing is communication. I mean, to find out the way I found out, I couldn't get into the building until 12 days before school started. Yet Mrs. Chambers was so sweet and said you could come anytime in the summer. So I just wanted to make it known that communication from administration to parents needs to be better. And I will be here to advocate not just for my child who has special needs, who's in the MH room, but all kids. I just think it's disgusting the way that myself, I know it's a small percentage, I understand that. But they are just as important as a straight A student.
Of course.
But I feel like because the way it came about and the way it was handled amongst many people, it's such a shame. It's such a shame that our district treats our kids that way.
I want to tell you, I'm sorry. I am sorry about that, and it's not going to change what
No.
happened. I understand that. I'm glad you're telling us that, because we would have no way of knowing what you're
And I will
telling us.
keep telling you
I
everything.
hear you, and I will make sure
Thank
that
you.
that does not happen.
Thank you. Because they are
Because-
some people might disagree,
Right.
but every kid gets affected by it. But, I mean, if you look at studies and ask any expert, the most affected kids are special ed kids with change.
Yes.
So that's, you know,
How is it going now?
she's slowly adjusting. She says, I want to go back to
Of
Highlands.
course, yeah. But you didn't
Things
have
that
the
were
room.
promised that were being there or not there. You know,
Right.
the bathroom, just real quick, unless I don't know if someone else has special ed kid, especially an MH. She is potty trained, but sometimes she has accidents. At Highland, there was a bathroom in there. Again, I know with the law, there doesn't have to be a bathroom. But when I'm talking about human decency of a child who has an accident and has to go out a room, up a ramp, down a hallway, down another hallway if she has poop in her pants or pee. I'm just saying, where's the decency of not knowing things? Again, legally,
I
get it.
understand, but
But
that's
the
not what we're
common
about.
decency, and it took me forever to find out why they had to close that MH room in Highland. And honestly, I still really don't know. I've been waiting on a list, right? Dr. Simsick and Dr. Martin.
Well, yeah, I mean.
A list of all the reasons, you know, how they tried to keep them there.
Right.
But I'm just saying, I'm an advocate for my child, but I will be an advocate for every special needs kid from forever.
So we have we put together, a group of parents came to us and talked to us about the special ed program. And we're meeting again at the end of September. I'll make sure that you're on that list
Please.
because.
And the strategic planning
Because
committee
there's lots
too.
of things that we're talking about.
Awesome.
And this would be part of that. So
Beautiful.
I'll put your name in it.
That'd be
And
awesome.
we can't go back and do that. But we want to make sure things are good for you. So please make sure you let us know. And I'll make sure you're with that group and we're gonna do this. We're gonna make sure.
Thank
okay?
you from the bottom of my heart for having that compassion to see it. I know there's so many other things going on, and I understand it's a small population, but to have that compassion means the world. That's the Brecksville I know. That's the Brecksville that I graduated from, and my husband and our siblings. So thank you for that.
Well, that's who we are. That's what
I
we're
haven't
supposed
felt
to be.
that in a
Oh,
very
I'm
long
sorry.
time.
I'm sorry.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mike Berlin, 4826 Snow Blossom. Kathy, the date that I found, the best date I could find was
Yeah.
August 7, 2018. And it was a Cleveland.com article that it quoted Chris saying that then Design announced the school was going to open, the new school was going to open in 2021. So
Okay.
that's as close as I could find just doing the quick
Thank you.
internet search. I sent it to you.
Well, here's a lesson, and this is a lesson through the hard way. You don't just take what you're fed, you look into it, and we have been working really hard as a board to make sure that we do our own research as well, like you said. We need to continually question everything. I mean, and unfortunately, sometimes we learn the hard way, as you
Right.
see. I'm telling you, that's pathetic, I think, that I didn't know why. But I didn't know why they picked that date. I should have asked, and
No, I just wanted
it's
to let
not, no, but I
It's-
want to tell you, like, I think I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't ask that question. And it's, I should have known what the rationale was, so, thank you.
Sure. And I have one question about these tennis courts. So, right now, we have 5, but some of them are usable or not usable. The city has 3 usable tennis courts. I'm not a tennis player, but all my friends who play tennis on them love them. How do we determine the number 5 that we need 5 tennis courts? Why are we looking, my question is, where did the need for 2 additional courts come from? The city has 3 usable ones.
Right.
I don't know how many people are on the tennis team. I don't know how many people take tennis.
So I think they need 5 courts to play varsity. So that's where the number 5 came. They
Meaning-
needed 5 for the matches when we host
When-
matches.
When you host matches, you have to have enough courts to play multiple matches in parallel.
Right.
Right.
And 5 is the minimum?
I don't know if
That's
that's,
it's the total. I think there's 3 single matches and 2 doubles matches.
But they have to happen simultaneously?
I think they do in the fall because darkness sets in at some point and you have to play them all simultaneously.
But if
So-
you had lights?
That's-
So my question, I'm trying to just understand, I don't know how many kids play tennis in the district. I don't know if it's 15 or 50. And my question is anybody, have we done the evaluation that we absolutely need 5 tennis courts?
Yes. I guess what would, and I'm not gonna explain this perfectly.
That's
because
fine.
I'm a softball parent, not a tennis parent, but okay, but that said, so there was a group of tennis parents that brought this all to light, and they explained to us what had been going on because, we didn't have the amount of courts, and our students on the junior, my understanding was that our students on the junior varsity were having to play these shortened versions of matches when we hosted because we didn't have enough courts. Is that what you remember? So that was my understanding, but the parents explained it to us. The number of 5 is what you need to fully host. We were having to have because of the disrepair up here, we were having to go to other, Joelle, is that right? We were having to go to other schools and we didn't host last year,
well,
is that correct?
that was, so we've been in a cycle of patching, and the
I understand, and
contract-
I understand
Yes, the
the,
number.
I understand the current condition
Right.
of the courts. I mean, we've been on them for
Yeah.
supplemental stuff, so I understand that. My question is, my thought process is, okay, we need 5 courts to play varsity tennis, right? If we look at the numbers, let's say we play 8 home matches a year. I don't even know what the number is. It could be 42 home matches. It could be 6, right? So have we thought through the process before we move down that line of saying we could still have a varsity tennis team without 5 tennis courts? They might have to play away. They might play 16 games on the road or matches on the road versus
That's what they did last year.
and have them at home. But it wouldn't preclude them from practicing on the 3 city courts. It wouldn't preclude them from many other things that other sports have, right? So we don't necessarily have facilities. We don't have a special needs room at the right standards at Highland. So, but we're looking at putting $200,000 into 2 tennis courts so that we could play 8 tennis matches per year. So that's my question.
I understand that, and then for me personally, it becomes a question of equity. And I look around and I see, we have a baseball field that the athletic boosters have raised money, to the tune of $150,000.
Plus
what I
all
remember.
the
Then you look
teams
at a
that
turf
donate.
football field. Then you look around, and you have to say, why is that fair that they should have to not have what almost every other school is providing for tennis? So for me, the rationale is that.
And I'm just asking
I
the
think-
question because it kind of, the tennis courts have resurfaced from the last
Yeah.
meeting that
I
I
think beyond the fairness, if you're gonna have a tennis team that's at a varsity level, and Chris or Joelle, chime in, I think there's requirements that you've gotta meet, which is you've gotta be able to host home matches. Maybe you can get a waiver or something if your courts are being built, or, a temporary thing, but I don't know. My understanding was that 5 is required. Is that, can either of you speak,
Yeah, it's minimum number required to have the teams, because the JV and varsity do play at the same time too, so you have to have, and for timing and for OHSAA schedules, we don't control our schedules.
No,
It's designed with our conference, so, you can't say, okay, well, our varsity team is gonna play at this time and JV is gonna play at 7 if that's not what the rest of the conference is doing. So you have to have the facilities to be able to provide at the same time if that's how the schedule is set up by the conference.
And so the money for if you guys build the tennis courts, that's great. I'm just trying to understand it right now. But the money for the tennis courts is coming out of where?
Well, so money there is a general fund
Understood.
which you can use for anything
That you want to use it
want,
for.
for
Right.
the most part. right? There's capital, there's money that's specifically related to capital improvements, it's a PI fund, okay? And you can only use that money for capital, for permanent improvement type items. And so, and then we have this pot of money, which is bond money, okay? Which is, some of it was dedicated towards, originally, the plan was to use some of it for athletics and then fix up the middle school and the high school. So specifically, which bucket is this $250,000 going to come out of? I don't have an answer specifically which bucket. More than likely, it's gonna be the general fund. John, I don't know if that's something you would, okay. So, which, again, whether it comes out of general fund, right, or it comes out of PI, I mean, eventually, it's all money that the district has, so which bucket it comes out of tends not to be as important, because all the money that's in the pot for the district to use, we're gonna operate. For instance, Valor Acres, we signed an agreement to sign off on that, where we're going to receive some income back from that. We're not obligated to say whatever the number is.
No, but it was a general question to say, and it goes to the cautionary tale that we talked about before, right? Trying to help. It's almost be careful, because we're talking about the bond issue, we're talking about the new school. We're stating that it's more expensive than what we thought it was by a significant amount, and it's cutting into a budget. It's making that budget smaller, and we're down to $1 million, right? Well, it's a bad narrative to say, hey, it's more than we thought it was, and it's $6 million more than we thought it was, or whatever the number is, 4, 2, 3. But when I sit through the meeting, and now we're talking about a $250,000 2 tennis courts, $180,000 2 tennis courts, whatever it is, it's a tough narrative for you at one moment for anybody to say, hey, we're living by the skin of our teeth because we missed this bond number because the state of Ohio required us to get a bond before we actually investigated how much money we needed, to then come back and say, we only have $1 million to upgrade our schools, which service whatever our 4,000 students.
Yeah.
But yet we can invest $250,000 in 2 tennis courts to supplement 3 tennis courts that the city already has for the X number of players to play tennis, right? And
So for me,
that's my narrative.
Well,
that
and I
it's a
hear
cautionary
what
tale.
you're saying. For me, it's not something I can give you an exact number on, but I'm looking at, we're going to be closing 3 schools. We're going to have hopefully a different tier system with our busing. And so the thing is that there's going to be other cost savings. There's going to be more than $1 million, when we go to do repairs. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm also seeing a situation that's starting to occur with the tennis team, because we've chosen to have a tennis team, and our parents want that that is in such disrepair. It's not fair to that tennis team. And if you look around at the other sports that we are hosting, it's so inequitable, it's not fair. And that, in itself, we should start, examining what, where we put our money. And so.
And mine is not to attack the tennis courts, right?
No, and I know you're not.
It's the narrative of the board and the statements that are coming. It's the messaging that we're talking about, right? It's the dangerous, tough thing, right? Do I think our tennis team should have the best tennis courts? Absolutely. Do I think our band should have the best band equipment that they should have? Absolutely. Do I think our small little basketball team shouldn't have to wear shorts that they have to roll up because we buy large shorts for every kid, right? I think that's kind of ridiculous, but there's not enough money to buy the basketball team shorts that fit. So
well, here's the thing, they're not even getting the best, the tennis team. They're so sad, the tennis courts, that it's unsafe, it's dangerous. So we either make a decision, we're not gonna do that, we're not gonna host, if that's even a possibility, or not have a tennis team, and that's not where I can tell you personally I'm willing to go. It's not even gonna be, they're gonna have to use those, tennis courts in disrepair. So we're still gonna have to just give them okay.
And I appreciate all of this feedback. We appreciate all this feedback. The challenge that you find out we have as a board is that school finances are complicated, very complicated. They're nuanced. There are different aspects that take years to figure out. Take a look around. Who's in this room? You know how many people we usually have for a board meeting?
2.
Yes, our staff, okay? Take a look on YouTube at how many people are watching a video. Very few, okay? So the problem is that when there's an issue that parents are saying, I want to plug in because my kid, you close Central and now my kid's at a school and now you're delaying that, now I'm plugging in, now I'm going to show up. It's great, we love having you, we love the feedback, we love hearing from you, but when we start getting into complicated topics like school finance and $250,000 for a tennis court, $44.5 million for, I mean, I can go on for hours, right, on this, but the problem is how many people want to sit and listen and have a dialogue about it and plug in and learn? Like, how much time are you willing to spend, right? We could send out an email update that explains brief finances, and it'll be a couple paragraphs. We could send out a book on it. How many people are going to sit there and read? So part of the problem is how many people want to spend the time to understand all of this. You want to understand enough of a level that you can make a decision or have some action on. So yeah, it's hard. These finances, where's the money coming from? We can give you everything you want. The problem is most people don't want to.
And I think myself and many, we don't want that much detail, right? But it goes back to the confidence level. Is when we go through some of these things, the message that's delivered and the authority which the message is delivered and the confidence that we walk away that we can go, okay, I feel pretty good, right? And I think, as someone else mentioned, is of the recent events and how they've taken place, all difficult decisions to make, and there was no one happy person, right? We had a gentleman here who's like, I moved to Brecksville because we have local schools, and I'm sitting here going, the greatest thing that's ever going to happen to Brecksville as far as growth, Brecksville Broadview Heights' growth is this combined state-of-the-art, most modern school in all the southern Cuyahoga County. So you're not going to please everyone. But whenever you do get the active participation, like you had last February and March, or now, or whenever, it's a time when I feel that everybody, myself included, and I've stepped on my own tongue many times, is that you have to be extra cautious of how things are said and what's said. And so when we get this fall of 2021 date, we go in it with a caveat of, hey, this is a consultant who we're paying to do their best, and they don't know everything, and we know that projects typically go wrong. The city probably didn't expect the jail or the police station to go 3 months late. But reasonable says, first thing doesn't happen. Now we're talking about the tennis courts. It's a nice thing to know, and I'm just asking the questions so I have a better understanding now that I am here.
Right.
But you're going to have other parents who are going to say, hey, obviously, what about me? What about my kid? Why are, the original number of $600,000 or $700,000 for 5 tennis courts was, as I remember, Kathy.
And we have other questions out there. Just to add on one other comment, which is all of our contact information is online. So you will find, I would encourage everyone, if you have questions, you have concerns, contact us, reach out to us, reach out to our staff. Joelle, Chris, our staff is very accessible too. So you have recourse too. So if you want to dive down deeper into understanding various topics, please reach out to us. I think you'll find all of the board very accommodating, and if you don't, let her know.
No, thank you.
And the other thing is, this last year, since I've been president, we've had forums after big decisions, and they've been well attended, and a lot of people have come, and we've gotten feedback and changed course on a lot of things. We got to do better at that. We have to do better at our messaging, like you said, but we have to also do better at continually keeping all of you in the loop. And I can tell you, all your feedback changes everything.
Right, and Kat, the one thing you mentioned, you have forums after your big decisions.
No, I didn't mean that. When we know that when you flip that around, that is not the truth. Okay, sorry.
So forums before the big decisions
yes,
would
thank you,
probably,
sir.
like Central happened afterwards, right? But forums before the big decisions?
No, that's not the way it's been happening,
Right.
sorry.
The forum happened
5 a.m.
before
brains.
before we voted on Central, we had a forum, and multiple forums actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, but it was announced and then the forums happen.
The
because-
Yeah,
decision-
your point's well taken.
Yeah.
When practical, we try to, we are looking to have forums or town halls to get feedback. We are
Right, and this
looking
one's great
for-
because you haven't made a decision on whether you're going with Schedule A or Schedule B yet. So there's at least some feedback and people have some buy-in or some interest before the vote, because you haven't called a vote on Schedule A.
Well, we have given direction that we're going with Schedule B. So that, you know, and that's why I said back on August 7th, if you go back and listen to that, we walked through all of this detail and the board gave direction. This is a follow-on, okay, but part of the reason why it's a follow-on and this forum didn't come before that decision is because the board was immersed in all of the details, and holding a forum and giving the impression that if you show up, you're going to influence our decision was when you didn't have any of the background that we had
Oh,
then
right.
to make the decision, and we knew who are the most likely people to show up are the people most impacted, right? If you're a parent of students that are going to be impacted or staff, you're going to be least happy about it. So we wanted to give that opportunity for you to put this presentation on and educate and show what went into the decision. But in this particular case, the sequencing was a bit different because we were looking for what is going to go into this decision. And all of the facts that went into the decision, were clear enough that the board felt comfortable in providing that direction.
Yes.
More questions?
Jen Hedgerow, 2711 Boston Road. I'm a little bit in a unique situation because not only do I have 3 children in the district, 5th grader, 3rd grader, and then a pre-K, I'm also a business owner in Brecksville. I spend the majority of my day talking to all the Brecksville parents. Unfortunately, I think that you're mistaken if you think that they don't know what's going on. I think that the problem is that you guys have a PR problem. The only information, the people are aware of what's going on. But I think the message just has to be clear because now it's becoming a joke in the community. Talking to parents, they just are like, oh yeah, we're never gonna see this school. And they're losing faith in you guys because we weren't upfront. I knew that we were never gonna get a school in 3 years, but not everybody was. Along those lines, my second comment is to you with your MD child. I see these children. Do you know how many, and it breaks my heart. I'm gonna get emotional. So many parents leave Brecksville because of the conditions that you put these children in. I don't have a child, but I treat them. And my heart, I love these kids. And to hear somebody move and leave my practice because they have to go to a brand new school, I really hope that you guys do spend some time and focus and make sure that program is pristine with this new school.
I hear you, and I promise you that it will. I promise. I've kept my word with Gifted. I promise you, and I will not stop. I mean, that forum was the first opportunity where we got 13 parents in a room, and Mrs. Magyar and Mrs. Kramer, and we had a discussion that this isn't the way it should be. We are not servicing these kids the way that we should be. And, we can't go back, but I promise you that it's going to be different. Because Mrs. Magyar, she was there, she has made a lot of things that she's trying to turn and change. And the first step we believed was putting a special ed team leader, like we have an English team leader, a math team leader. And I can tell you, I don't know you, I do know you, and I know all of you, and I feel accountable, and it's going to happen, okay? And I'm sorry, I can't change the past. You have to keep telling me, and like I said, come to that meeting when we have it in September, and let's work together and make it different, because that's where we started about a month ago. And unfortunately, there's an explosion where things are so bad, and that's how we finally hear, something's got to change.
Now, my third comment is, my kid's chair was actually in that video that was shown for the bond that was sitting above the asbestos cracks at Highlands. What money is there to keep those schools and keep our kids healthy right now? I mean, because now I just heard we have a whole nother year to think about these kids.
Right.
And I'm gonna be at Highland now until the new school opens with the rest of my kids. So are we giving up on these schools? I mean, what if we have a water problem like we had at Central? Is there going to be, are we going to be able to fix it? And not just, I mean, we might get in a situation where we have to fix something rather than just patch something. I mean, do we have a contingency for what happens if one of these schools goes down in a really bad way?
Well, as I commented earlier, we are absolutely committed to having these buildings safe and functional for educational purposes. I mean, it's a balance on, you're not gonna put, new windows in the building, right? You're not gonna put a new roof on, so instead of a new roof, maybe you do some type of patch, right? But these buildings need to be clean, dry, and safe. You mentioned an asbestos crack. I mean, if there's asbestos, it's gonna be sealed. I don't know if Chris Code is still
Yeah,
around.
I moved.
Okay, yeah, so Chris, I mean, I'm assuming that the buildings all get inspected and are signed off on before the school year opens, that they're safe. Can you comment on that at all?
All the schools are inspected, you're correct. We're speaking about asbestos, and the schools are also inspected routinely for asbestos hazards. So we have professionals come in and do those inspections.
And for what it's worth, last year, there was some concerns, environmental concerns about Central. And we had an environmental impact study done. I mean, you can see it. I mean, it was long, right? It covered everything. And it looked at moisture, it looked at, is there mold, is there asbestos? I mean, it covers everything. And it came back, found to be, it was good. So even though the building was 100 years old, kudos to our maintenance staff and our to keep the building safe, dry, and functional. And that's what we intend to do with these buildings. It's not an option. Nobody's gonna say, yeah, the roof's leaking, just put another bucket under it. We will maintain these buildings so that they are usable for education, safe and dry, until we can get everybody migrated into the new building.
That's great, because I think going back to my initial comment about it's a PR problem, is because that video scared a lot of parents in the district. And now that you're telling us we have to live in these conditions another year, that's part of the problem. And that video, I think, really scared a lot of parents. And I have these conversations with the parents of my practice all day long. They're like, I don't want to send my kid there. And so just to reassure the public that these buildings are safe, we're going to do what we need to do. But then you close Central, it's like, oh my gosh, maybe they're not that safe.
Well, you know what,
and
I
think
never
that's
thought, I
what the
never thought
problem
of it that way, and, you're probably right, we need to do something like that to assure people, like an update after a month, here's where we're at, thank you.
Those videos were scary.
I
I
agree.
saw that, and that was my kid's chair.
I agree. Okay.
You're trying to strike that balance to be an impact for people to understand these are really old buildings,
Yeah.
but also, look, they're maintained.
Right.
So, but yeah, messaging wise, I think that's something we can look to do, is to try to communicate better to our community that the buildings are maintained and they're safe and dry and healthy and they're inspected and we're committed to keeping them that way until we can move into the new building.
Well, and the other thing, doing walkthroughs, and I personally want to do a walkthrough and see what it looks like. I need to understand that, but doing walkthroughs now that we have more children in there and more staff, and so that's what we'll do. A month from now, we'll give an update and make sure. Yes.
Lee Sturman, Carriage Hill, 6875. I understand that this was a banner year for kindergarten enrollment. What are the contingency plans if there's an explosion in population over the next couple of years where the school's not built? Thanks, please, and thank you. Yep.
Do you know where we landed on? Well, we saw, so to your question, we've had recently in the last 6 years, we've had multiple enrollment studies done. And what they showed was the same trend line which is happening in many districts, which is a slow decline in population, in student enrollment. And so when we sized the new school, it was with those enrollment studies in mind. Now, what we saw this past school year was an uptick in kindergarten, I believe. Was it kindergarten?
So we had an uptick in the timing of when kids registered, and then it slowed down over the summertime. I still think we're under what we had last year.
I was told that they weren't tracking the numbers of.
No, we track.
We're up elementary a little bit. We're down in our secondary. So
We
overall, our
track.
elementary went up, our secondary went down. but
I
we're
mean, people
almost,
that
we're less than 20 kids difference from where we were last year. We've actually flatlined.
Well, right, I was told that enrollment was cut off in April because of such high numbers.
So full day kindergarten was cut off. So we are required by state to only provide half day, which is what our district does currently. So we only have certain number of slots for full day. So full day completely filled up. The way we currently do it, it's on a first come, first served basis. So once all of those slots fill up, that was closed, full day. Everyone came and signed up for full day right away.
It was still being advertised online. I moved to the district in July, and I didn't find out till I came here to fill out paperwork that it was not offered.
It is offered up until
It
a
fills
certain,
up.
until it fills up, and then we're required by law to provide half day, so then we fill in the half day slots. And we put kids on waiting lists because a lot of times, people will sign up for a full day, and then they decide to move, and they go somewhere else, they might go to a different program, and then we keep people on a waiting list, and then we'll fill according to when they registered, according to that timeline, or according to when they came in and registered, and then those slots will get filled in full-time, and then we backfill into the half-day program. So we set numbers so that class sizes don't get crazy ridiculous. We also provide a scholarship program in our district for any child based on a diagnostic test that might need or benefit from a full-day program, and they also qualify for free and reduced lunch. We want to be able to offer those slots. So we cap those classes when we're filling full-day kindergarten at a certain number to allow room for those scholarship kids to move into that classroom without driving those class sizes up to 26 and 27. And then this year, I think, better than probably any year we have, we track those kids totally and filled up sections, and then had to move and had to make some adjustments in transportation, and we ended up with slots still at Highland. So we're not even full at capacity this year. We still have a couple slots, not very many, but so our numbers have flatlined out from where we were before. So I know, I guess our president said that to me this morning. They said we had this balloon. We're still where we were last year. We just had a balloon at the time of registration, because I think we did a really good job of letting people know it was kindergarten registration, and people came out and registered early.
I think that might be a skewed number, because my neighbor who was down here wasn't able to make it, moved to the district. They bought their house, but by the time that she was able to move here and, register and stuff like that, she's at St. Albert's, because she did not want to put 2 kids on one bus to Chippewa and another one to Highland. So that's not an accurate portrayal of what's actually happening. That probably, so there might be spots in Highland, but that's because people have
Just
chosen.
half day.
I know,
Oh,
she didn't
okay.
want to even do that. She doesn't want to put 2 kids on a bus to Chippewa. So that's a little bit of a skewed number. Maybe by only 10, but it's still not as accurate as you might think. And you might not know that if someone didn't tell you that.
Thank you.
I think to your question though about, if there is an unexpected uptick, we'll have to deal with that if it happens, right? I mean, but look for how much space we have in our buildings and,
Like, what would be the contingency plan? Would it be like temporary buildings? Would it be trying to move them into?
it could be anything. I mean, it depends on what the uptick is and where we're at. I
And
mean,
when, is it 2 years from now? Maybe we hold on to one of the buildings and we, repurpose it, but we don't let it go, like Hilton, for example. We also have Blossom, because the city's generosity, they allow us to use that. Maybe we look at that, but it's not.
Bristol is definitely becoming a city of choice because of the schools. Like, everything. That's why I moved here.
Yes.
Because
Right.
the schools were so good, and I wanted my kid to go to a
And
good
don't forget,
school.
we're
Right,
gonna
all
have
of
a
the-
pool as well soon, that we
So
always
all of
for
the
20 years.
demographics though are showing similar, right? People are having less children and so again, the board, there's a lot in front of us, and so we're not spending a lot of time contingency planning for something that's unlikely to happen. If it does happen, then we need to understand to what level is enrollment increasing, and then what are our options. So we would look at that, but we're not spending a lot of time trying to plan for a contingency on what happens if enrollment explodes in kindergarten.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, but to your point, when we do that master plan, it'll be, at least on my mind, that, one of these buildings we use and repurpose, so we do have an option if that future thing might happen. Do you see what I'm saying?
I
So,
understand.
yeah, and so that's what I would see, for me, that I would be looking
And I
at.
understand that the state minimum is half day, but, it's, I think the instruction level that kids who are doing a full day,
Agreed.
they're getting 3 times as much instruction time as a half day.
And that's a hope,
2.5
that is a
hours.
hope for us to complete, in my mind, personally, I would like to see it completely switch. It's I think the number was $450,000 for us to go completely full day. And mind you, so in my mind, educationally, that's what I would like to see us do. We're not there yet, and then we're gonna have to see what that looks like, you know, because we do have half day running with 30 kids, so is it 30, I think? No,
Well,
20.
yeah, I mean,
But-
she's talking about if the board were to decide to fully fund full-day kindergarten, it would be a $450,000 plus additional expense, right, which would immediately start to show up in our forecast and what our budget, and it would quicken the timeline on when we have to come back to the voters for new money. So we're not talking about that tonight, but there are significant financial implications. Like 85% of our families now pay for full-day kindergarten. It would be wonderful if we could pay for it all, but the vast majority will pay and go, and then some will go to St. Albert, some will go to other alternatives. Okay, so it is it's something the board's talked about before. We haven't made any decisions on it. Okay, but there is a huge cost component, which, you know, ultimately will come back to the taxpayers. And so, you know, the offering all-day kindergarten, we offer a lot of it, but obviously it fills up, and then there's got to be a cutoff point, right? Because, you know, at some point we have to say, okay, it doesn't. We're not going to be able to add another full-day kindergarten, and so we hit the cutoff point. So, you know, unfortunately, for some people, then they have to look for other alternatives.
Anyone else?
Lisa Galick, 3440 Mark Drive. On the topic of making sure the buildings are safe and well maintained, this is just anecdotal, but when I went to kindergarten phase-in for my daughter at Hilton, there's a bathroom in the classroom and then there's a faucet outside it for the kids to wash their hands. The faucet doesn't work. It turns on and then it snaps back off. So their teacher had to rig it with a bungee cord, so the kids have to push it back and pull the bungee cord on it to keep it on so they can wash their hands after they use the bathroom. And I asked, why wasn't the faucet replaced? This seems unsanitary. And she told me that it's not going to be replaced because they don't want to put new money into the faucet because the building's going to be closing. So I just wondered if you know about things like that, that those are requests that are being denied because the building is going to be closing.
So Mr. Code, would we deny something like that?
No, ma'am, I made a note.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Of course. Sometimes and that's communication as well, and no, we are upkeeping our buildings to level they should be upkept like we always have. We're not doing things, so
okay.
just bring it to our attention, and right there is your guy, right there, and he always does and maintains our buildings to the highest level. This one must have got away from him, but.
Okay, I understand extravagant things aren't gonna be updated, but to me a faucet seems like very basic, it seems very silly.
Thought maybe the bungee cord was a lesson in creativity and how you solve problems, maybe? I don't know.
They were all doing it, these little 5-year-olds are all.
Yeah, you know, hey, you know what, they
Times are
learn
tough,
a trick.
friends.
Learn what you can do with bungee.
Design thinking at its best.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
The new makerspace.
This is right.
Laura Reddinger, 9129 Meadow Lane. So I have a probably different perspective than most people sitting in this room because I have to sit up in front of this board for the city of Brexville on city council. I would just like to commend the group. You guys have to make decisions a lot of times real time and in some situations without being able to go back to the constituents and give them the opportunity to weigh in. So for everybody sitting in this room, I would just like you guys to know that everybody takes their decision making very seriously, and it's hard when we disappoint people. So I just like to make that comment. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna move on. Just to make this clear, the majority of the board has decided to go with Schedule B. Okay, that wasn't a vote, but that's where they landed. And so the thing is we're gonna make sure we maintain our buildings. Okay, we are also promising you that if you tell us something, we'll do the best to rectify it. But we don't know what we don't know. So again, my message to you is contact us, call us. Okay, we'll make it right. We'll make it right. We're a business of education and of the highest caliber. And so we want to make sure that we continue doing that, even though we aren't, in that new building. And the other thing is, personally, the discussion will continue for me personally, that I'd still like to see it not be a full year. I would still, like I said 2 weeks ago, I'd like to look still at creative solutions for us, maybe looking at other options of when, it's still, we're on Schedule B, but maybe it's in the fall or something. And us going with you through that so you can see what the cost is or whatever, and us all deciding together, that it's a full year. And that's my.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, for coming. Really appreciate it.
And I would echo that, and again, I would reiterate, it's wonderful that you showed up. We are so appreciative that you take the time out of your busy schedule, many of you with children, and come here and give us feedback, okay? Stay plugged in, pay attention to our meetings, plug in, watch the videos, look at the documents we post, almost everything, unless it's executive, content information, is posted in the public section. Board Docs is wonderful, okay? We use Board Docs, which is a platform to host agendas and meeting minutes of public bodies. And what you'll find is that you can go out on Board Docs. Once you get out there onto our site, you can search on anything. Search on tennis, and you will find every meeting where we had tennis on the agenda, okay? So it's very powerful. The videos that are indexed let you drive into just what you're interested in, so stay plugged in. If you have other people you run into that you concerns about our transparency or whatever, let them know. Our contact information is there. Show up to our board meetings, email us, call us, watch the videos. We want to hear feedback. The problem is that a lot of times we don't get enough, and so unless it's just a particular topic that's kind of a hot button topic. So please stay engaged. Thank you for all that you do for our district, and stay plugged in.
Okay, I'm gonna move forward if that's okay. Item 6, we have our president announcements and recognition. So if you just stay for that discussion, you're welcome to leave. Thank you for coming.
Here. Presentation. Can you send it?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Because I was like, used to lacrosse days, like and stuff.
It's good to see you.
You too.
Take care.
You too.
Bye, Michaela.
Okay. So item 6, we have our president's announcement. I have one commendation, I have one recognition, and then I have one on voting protocol. So the first is Mrs. Speed. We're going to recognize that you are our new trustee for the foundation. You want to tell the board a little bit about yourself and what your background is and how you came to be in that coveted seat.
Thank you for this opportunity. I have come from Parma. I was very active in the my old school district. Worked my way through with the PTA, did school board. I've done school board meetings for about 6, 7, for a very long time. Very active in the buildings. I'm a firm believer with child advocacy. I'm always learning something. From the very beginning, from when I graduated, I went into like medical assisting, and then just things transpired, life happened, and then me being involved in the schools, it made me think of a different direction. My experiences working with the schools, working with the PTA, working with the different aspects, the different facets of that, I think helped me bring me to where I am today. And just listening to the conversations we just had, I have a little better understanding of where the school board sits. So I do appreciate the opportunity to sit on the school foundation. I'm very excited to get started. I'm always learning something new, and I really appreciate the opportunity to serve the communities of Brecksville and Robians.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Anything else? Get to work right away, right? That's what
Oh,
they're gonna
I'm
do
already,
here.
I'm already
They're
there.
gonna get you right to work with that
I am a
fundraiser.
workhorse, so I always have these great ideas. I like to bounce off ideas.
Good.
I'm very
It's a fun
open.
group, so I am sure you'll enjoy it and make a lot of good friends, so thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay, so we have the next one, we have our commendations. Mrs. Magyar, you are in press. You have Crane's Business magazine. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And
Yeah, I was nominated by one of our families at Crane's Cleveland Business to be honored, or at least nominated to receive the honor of a notable woman in education. And so I was notified probably back in June that I would receive that distinction. And so it was in the magazine, and it was publicized, and got invited to a luncheon where they honored all of the people. It is a women's group, so all of the notable women in different fields, so in education and HR and medicine and so forth. And so it's a very nice event, and I was very honored to be nominated by one of our families. And then I went to a meeting with Phil Robinson, our House of Representatives, last week, and was very shocked and embarrassingly surprised with a proclamation from the Ohio House of Representatives. And very honored to receive it, and came to work the next day and had one from the Ohio Senate sitting on my desk. So it was very nice to receive these two proclamations from both the Ohio House of Representatives for having this distinguished honors of being nominated as Crane's Cleveland Business Notable Woman in Education. So it's
amazing.
very
Thank
cool.
you very much. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming to our district. And there's a Mrs. Magyar Day. Is that what you're gonna get? And a key? And
I don't know.
all that. So, okay. The last one is voting protocol, just for clarification. So I'd like to read this so everybody understands. We try to always do things in a proper fashion, and sometimes we're not totally aware of, something that might not be going, in the best protocol. Specifically, I want to address recent past voting on recommendation by the administration for supplemental contracts. So this is our supplemental contract list. This one's actually light, and all our supplementals are actually lumped together. So as you know, we as board members regularly vote to affirm or reject the recommendations by the administration for the supplemental contract for the district. Rather than voting on each contract individually, we typically get the recommendations as a collective group and vote upon them all at once with one vote. My husband, who has been an approved coach in our district while I have been a board member, has been a coach in the district many years prior, before I was actually on the board, and has typically been a part of the collective recommendation and the subsequent annual approval by the board, of which I have 3 occasions abstained in voting and 6 occasions unwittingly participated in the voting. It has come to my attention that the proper protocol is for the recommendation, because he is a relation of mine, should be separated as was done at our last meeting, and for me to abstain on the vote. So, I, for the record, just wanted to make you all aware that I did reach out to the Ohio Commissions on several weeks ago and detail for the commissioners each of my past votes for supplemental contracts, and request guidance on the method of rectification if it is required, and will report to you at once after that is accomplished. So I just want to let you know that, and this will be submitted in board docs. I'd also like to make a note that my husband has spent a significant amount of money on the softball program, and we've never profited or taken a dime from the softball program. So I want to also do that, and I did submit that to the commission as well, showing a massive loss in the Mack household with my husband being the softball coach. So from now on, my husband will be separated out, so everybody feels good. He always passed with a 5-0 vote. Taking me out will make it a 4-0 vote, so I feel good about that. So thank you very much for listening to that. Item 8, board member committee reports. So we have Financial Liaison Audit Committee. I don't think we have anything. Permanent Improvement Committee.
We have not met.
We have not met. Board Policy Committee.
You'll be meeting soon.
Yeah.
We have the updates.
Okay. All right. Okay, and then we're gonna move on. Item 9, District Committee Reports. So we have Transportation of Appeals Committee. How's that going?
None to date.
None to date.
We have a meeting scheduled,
Okay,
foreseeing the possibility that we might have a couple appeals.
okay.
Figured it'd be easier to get it on the books. Last time we had a hard time getting everybody together, so we got it on the books, so it's easier to cancel if we don't have something come forward.
Okay. Cog Valley Career Center, Mr. Gilbride sent me a text letting me know that he could not be here, but he said that he would be here next month to give the board a report on some of the things that we requested. Safety and security meeting report.
That meeting is actually scheduled for the 12th
Okay.
of September.
School foundation report.
Welcome, Marla. And Sue Sprocco, Mary Ann Jones, Danielle Campbell and others did a phenomenal job on convocation, awarding the teachers. So I don't know.
So what was our theme this year?
Was it to keep calm and carry on? Palm instead of calm, keep palm, and then there was grass.
Smell Sue all over this whole thing,
you know,
right? Yeah.
it was good though.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Okay. And then we have a date for our next fundraiser. Is that correct? What's our date?
February 13th, the day
Okay.
before Valentine's Day.
Nice. All right, that's going to be great. Okay, we'll keep that going. We have PSO report.
Short report, PSO had their retreat. I think it was
And you
2
crashed it?
I crashed it.
Okay.
And learned a lot.
Okay.
Just was able to get email addresses and connections at each of the PSOs and their first meetings in September.
Okay. Other board reports? No? Okay. So we're going to move on to item 10, superintendent's announcements.
School opened with very little, I'm gonna knock on wood, very little hiccups. So far, so good. We have our Love Rally tomorrow, both at 10 a.m. and again at 6:30 p.m. for the pre-K 4 students and parents. The kids have submitted their speeches to me. I spent the morning reading them and getting teared up. We have some very emotional and thoughtful students that will be speaking tomorrow, so I'm very excited about that. We have Dr. Robert Smith from Metro Health Hospital. He is a pediatric psychologist coming to give a positive message to the kids both during the day and in the evening, and so we're very excited for that, as well as some staff speakers that will be at both of the rallies. Our band and choir are both singing and performing, so we're really excited about that. And it's going to be sunny and 77, and Joelle's really excited about that, so we don't have to worry about relocating. And so we're pretty excited about that tomorrow. And then our first of 4 Take Back Togetherness nights is scheduled for September 9th. We scheduled 4 this year based on feedback that we got from a survey that we sent out to parents at the end of last year after we had the Take Back Togetherness night. They loved it. They thought it was great. They asked to do more, so we decided to do 1 per quarter this year. The first one is September 9th. And they also asked us to do them on different days. So we have 1 on Monday, 1 on Tuesday, 1 on a Wednesday, and 1 on a Thursday to kind of spread them out. We're also still encouraging our community partners to plan maybe an event on that night so families can go enjoy that event together, and encouraging all families to put down their device. So I will not be asking people to post pictures this year because I got that in feedback. He told us to put down our devices, but then you want us to post a picture. So no pictures this year, but just enjoy time with your family, and so that is coming up as well, and so looking forward to that.
So our Love Rally, it's our initiative with mental health and putting that at our forefront. And I wanted to let you know, Mrs. Kramer and I met with a parent on Monday that asked to meet with us. And the parent gave us wonderful feedback about that screening that we did at the end of the year, that their child had some issues and the screening caught that, and the child was brought down to the office. He's like, I know. And she said, I can see how hard that this district is working on, putting that at the forefront. So thank you. I mean, you did a lot of that work, Mrs. Simsick, and, vetting that out. And thank you for continuing that. I know the first one was great, but I'm sure it's just going to get better and better. And we're going to continue to do some of these good changes that we've done in the last year, and I assured her that we will have a different another conversation about this and how we can even do better. So Moving forward, we have 11 superintendent's consent agenda. We have A, certified recommendations, B, classified recommendations, C, supplemental recommendations, D, approval of superintendent's consent agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Just a quick clarification in front of you, you have a updated classified list that we at the last minute added a substitute bus driver to, just so you're aware. So just one additional sub. As you know, we are in great need of bus drivers, so we wanted to get them.
Look at the camera when you say that.
We're in great need of bus drivers. And so we
Please.
wanted to get them approved as quickly as possible, so we did a last minute add-on just to bring it to your attention.
Okay. All right, so roll call? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask, how are we doing with bus drivers? I know we're in great need, but I mean, are we?
Oh, I think we're doing pretty good.
Mr.
I mean,
Code's getting a license. He's been working.
everything, all things considered, we almost have a driver behind the wheel of all of our new buses.
That's great.
So that's,
So we're not gonna have a bus at the center of town like that one year we did that where
That was great advertising.
It was great advertising.
It was
But we don't
awesome.
need to go, we don't do that.
We're not
good
there
so
yet.
far.
we're working on other initiatives right now.
That's okay. Roll call?
Mr. Dolson?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer? Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item 13, treasurer's consent agenda. We have
Item
A.
12, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yep.
Oh, item 12, sorry. 2019-2020 preschool handbook. Item B, 2019-2020 bus routes. Mrs. Kramer, please come up here. Item C, approval of superintendent's other business. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
So just annual approvals for you as
Okay.
board.
Great. Okay, roll call?
Mr. Dolson?
Yes.
Mr. Ziegler? Sorry. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
You can pick your paper, Pat. Yes. Okay. Item 13, treasurer's consent agenda. We have A, the financial report of July 2019. B, minutes August 7th, 2019. C, approval of the treasurer's consent agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so you're gonna be on, Mr. Scott. It's your turn.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Be patient with me. I arrived 2 weeks ago, and the July financial statements were prepared basically by the previous treasurer. I'm not gonna go through each one. You only had 1 month of expenditures, 1 month of revenues, so it's not a whole lot to tell you. But the revenue part of it, the biggest increase was the timing of the last county auditors' property tax collections. The expenditures were overall were not bad. There were some lump sum payrolls in June that created some increases. And most of it, the items there was mostly timing of expenditures from 1 year to the next year. But it's only 1 year, 1 month of calculations, and it's not going to tell you a whole lot. Basically, page 2 is the same as page 1, but it's basically on a forecast on a fiscal year. Page 3, again, it's just 1 month report, so it's not going to highlight a whole lot for you. But if you want any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, or get you the answers. Page 5 is the FinSum report. These are all the funds that the district holds on their records. And as you can see, the general fund has a cash balance of $23,999,107, with the encumbrance of $3,845,010.
I don't know about the assistant.
I can't see it.
Oh, put your glasses on.
I like trying to hear it. The general fund is really the only one that you have a lot of control over because it is taxpayers' money. The other funds were either grants from the state, federal government, building funds, PI funds. They are controlled what we are allowed to spend within those funds. Student activity funds, we don't have a whole lot of control. It depends how much the students raise in their budgets. Same thing with the athletic department. We don't have a whole lot of control how we spend those monies. It's based on what they bring in each month or each year. Page 6 are advances. Back in June, I believe, you advanced $141,195 to various funds. Those funds are now need to be returned back to the general fund. At the end of each fiscal year, you cannot be in a deficit position, so we have to advance funds to those various funds. Your district is very fortunate. The districts I have been in, we normally advance $500,000 or $600,000 every June. And then it is returned in most cases. Cafeteria fund, it does amaze me, they're in the black, and I think they need to go around to Ohio and teach how to keep the food service in the black. Because I don't know too many districts who keep food service in the black. Page 7, basically all your federal, state grants that you have been allotted last year, and we're getting ready to close those grants out sometime in September. As you can tell on page 8, we have a total of $81,713,405. If you go back to page 5, it balances back to the cash balances. Interest earned for this month overall through all the bank accounts, we made $90,344.36 in interest last month. Basically, 10 and 11 is your appropriations. I'm sorry, page 10 is your appropriation summary. That just tells you the money that you have appropriated for various funds and how much has been spent, which is 1 month, of course. And that just gets bigger each month we keep using this format. The last item is the check. Anything over $10,000, I believe we have to let the board know about it. And so that's the list on page 11 of any checks that were issued over $10,000. Is there any questions, concerns? And I would do the best I can to give you an answer. If not, I will give you an answer tomorrow. Yes, Ms. Perry?
Why are we, what's Lake County ESC?
I can't give you a definite, it's a Lake County consortium. And I'm not-
It's the Nalliance program that we use at the high school.
High school.
Okay.
Counseling. For college, right?
Yes.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Nice job, Mr. Scott. I think you, like I said, new assistant made you glad. All right, thank you, Brian. Okay. He's like good. All right, roll call.
Mr. Dolson?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item 14, closing items. A, we have announcements.
Next meeting, September 25th.
Okay, and we're gonna have another meeting before that, executive session, and we decided next
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Yes.
so executive session only. Okay. And item B, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Dolson?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes, we are now adjourned. See you next week. Thank you.